um, 15 years now, right?
Yeah.
So, what has been the biggest challenges you faced over the 15 years?
Mm.
And I will, I'm going to throw this out there too. You ready for this?
Yeah.
You can't talk about COVID.
Nice. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
Because I know,
Fair
because
enough.
everybody can be like, "Oh, COVID,"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like
No, I got
deny
you.
that, but it's just, yeah.
No, I got it. Yeah.
What have
Yeah.
been challenges for you?
I think from the very jump and continuing to this day, and I'm sure most people in mission field would say this, is that the biggest challenge that we face is resource, is having the resources to meet the opportunity and responsibility that you see.
Yeah,
And so, and that resource can be multiple ends. Like obviously, dollars in necessary, but then also like, we find some big projects that we're like, man, we really would like to do this. This would be a great thing for us to undertake, and yet the resource isn't just dollars in, but now we need extensive manpower to do this, right? And so we're not talking about 7 groups of 20, but you're talking about 30 groups of 30, right? You're talking about a
wow.
project that's got to expand a lot longer. So resource is big, right? And that has been, I think that has been at the top of the list. When in a good headspace, we're able to sit back and say, yes, well, resources are not the Lord. I know the God who has all the resources. And so he's going to work that out. But in the day to day, like, my wife and I will tell stories about when we started the project and we would write our paychecks, but we didn't have money in the bank to cash them. And so they would just kind of stack in a drawer. And you would look at it and be like, oh, someday, God, you're going to make it possible for that to get cash. And look, God's been faithful. God's been faithful. We're all doing just fine. But resource, I think, would be high on the list. I think there's always been an uphill climb within the church communities of helping the church to learn to embrace the wider community.
Okay.
And so I think that's just work. That's work.
Yeah.
And it's come with its challenges, like we find ourselves saying, hey, like we are of different theological tribes,
Sure.
and yet God has called us all to go serve in this capacity, to love our neighbor, and to serve in mission. And so finding ways to help each other do that well, helping people to build relationships so they can learn to trust each other and just kind of walk on this road of ministry together. That's one of the things I loved about Breakaway, right? Like Breakaway was this mix of churches from all over the place,
Yeah.
Though regionally, but I mean all over the place in terms of the theological maps.
Yeah.
And yet we grounded on saying, hey, Jesus is our Lord, and so together we're going to be able to do this, right? And so that's been really special. So helping people to continue that, even in terms of mission and service, that's been a beautiful thing that we've enjoyed being a part of. But it's also come with challenges. And then I think the other part is just like we're intentionally serving in communities that just don't have as much when it comes to financially, and so a lot of the folks who come from situations where they they're used to having more. And so there's kind of the socioeconomic breakdowns that we've got to dismantle some things in order to rebuild some things. And so, but those are all great. Like we're thankful to be in those spaces, as we're thankful to be in a place where we have to trust on the Lord for resources, because it does grow us as followers of Jesus and as an organization. Like it's been good for us to be in that space, though. Like if the Lord just wanted to drop the windfall on us, we wouldn't say no, like we would trust the Lord with that too. So
with that, what are the blessings you've seen?
We've seen the light bulb go off for people.
Okay, I like that.
We've had conversation. Here you go. Here's a great example. We've had conversations with youth pastors who are like, "Hey, we want to keep coming to the project, but we want to start coming every other year, because on the opposite years, we want to do something in our neighborhood." And we've had youth pastors call us and say, hey, would you come out and do a training for our team on how to be equipped with goggles or glasses to see the opportunities that exist right in our own backyard. And so, like we track how often churches return to us and stuff like that, and so we want to see that. We want to see ongoing,
Sure.
return rate from
It's
these groups.
partnerships. Right?
Yeah, we want to see that. And when we don't see it, we want it to be because of this.
Yeah.
We want it to be because church is like, oh, I just got it. I got it. Like, hey, Philly, will you help us open the Lansdale project? Help us figure that out.
Yeah.
Help us figure out what does it look like to serve on my block in my neighborhood. Though my block and my neighborhood aren't in an urban setting and they're in a different situation. So what does that look like? And so we love that. And that has been huge. We've had the blessing of, we work with a lot of people right out of college, in college and right out of college. And so a lot of our staff and interns, and so we get to deploy a lot of people into their first career calling. And so that's been a lot of fun. We've got about a dozen people who've come through our ministry who are now in full-time ministry.
Yeah, that's great.
And man, just knowing that we've been a part of, not in totality, we've just been a part of the way in which God shaped them to go out and to serve in full-time capacity. Like, man, that feels special, right? That's been a real blessing. That's a real encouragement when we're having the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
Being reminded that God used us, that God allowed us to be a part of something, and that something is continuing. Like that gets you through a lot of times. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask there's another question just came to me. Was there ever a point where you were like, I don't know if we can do this? Like it was like, 2 years in, you're like, okay, this is good, but I'm not sure this is going to fly. I don't know. Was there ever a point?
Oh, there's many points. Honestly, there've just been many points. Like when we tell the story from, whatever, it's the 30,000 foot view of the Philadelphia project, we can look at all these highlights of things. Boom, this happened here. And, we got a building here. And, we completed this work project here. And we did an ordination and installation service for a staff member here. Like we can point to some great mile markers. Yeah. But for every peak, there was a valley.
Okay.
Right. And so, I mean, I can remember the first time we got to a spot where we said we can't afford our staffing model and we needed to make shifts. And that was devastating.
Yeah.
And just left us in a place of being like, Lord, is this it?
Right.
I can remember the first transition of first time we had a staff person who said, hey, like, I can't continue on this road. This is, it's too unstable, like that was crazy. And I shared earlier, but like my wife often tells the story of like, hey, like when we got married, she did all of the finances for our family. That's what she did. She handled finances for us. When we started the Philadelphia project, she stopped handling finances for us because she was like, I can't live in the angst of knowing that we're not getting, the money's not there to pay us. And we had to choose. Like we were literally just had to start a project. It was like, pay us or pay the staff, pay us or pay the staff. And we elected to pay the staff because we thought that was right. And we trusted that God would work it out. And
wow.
And probably was so busy that I didn't even think about having to trust that God would work it out. I just kept going,
Right.
It wasn't like trying to make some glorious choice here. It was just like, no, tomorrow that nail's got to get put in. I can make it happen.
Yeah.
So those kind of moments, I think I can look back on them and say, Lord, you were with us in that valley. But if we didn't go through that valley, I wouldn't understand the peak.
Amen.
So.
Yeah. No, I like hearing that. Well, I don't like hearing that you had valleys, but
yeah, sure.
But I mean, I like the fact that you share it that way because I think that's a good lesson for all of us. Because I do think when things are good in the sense that we're all like, oh, I'm good. I don't need it.
That's right.
But man, I know my own life, and I think in the folks I work with, man, that's when you grow the most when you're in the valleys.
Yeah. You
learn the most. I mean, you trust. You understand what it means to really trust.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective of that idea of the valleys and the peaks, because people need to hear that too.
Yeah, Eric, before you jump off, one thing that
Yeah.
I thought about that might be helpful for other folks as well is that in those valleys, I had to identify who was going to walk with me in those places. Like, who are the trusted voices that I was going to invite in? I couldn't just run around on every podcast and say, hey, like, the bottom's falling out, but come to the project anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so who are the people who were like going to know the depths of what was going on? And being able to identify 2 or 3 people to just be like, hey, I need you to walk with me when I'm down here, because everybody else gets to see me when I'm up here.
Right.
And that was huge. And so for me, that's one of the words of encouragement that I give to everybody, is identify those battle buddies, those folks who are going to walk with you in those spaces when you're like, whether we're talking about personal or professional, right? Like when things aren't going right at home, who is it that you're honest with about that, so that they're walking with you and holding you accountable, but also encouraging you in that space to see those areas of your life shift. Yeah. And so for me, I had to find them, and I was really grateful to find them. I found 3 different guys in kind of 3 different phases of life, and just kind of asked them to just mentor me through that space. One of them even was younger than me, and I needed that youthful joy of the Lord experience. And then I needed somebody who I had walked with for a while, and he was a colleague of mine, and then a mentor who said, hey, like, you've been mentoring me for a long time. Can you not leave me during this time?
Yeah.
I need you during this time. And it was great. It's been really helpful for the sustainability, the long-term sustainability for the project for me.
Yeah. And I think there's a lesson in that too, because I think we want to hear the Lord.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a big believer that the Lord speaks to us through His Spirit, but I also believe that the Lord speaks to us through others.
Come on.
And I think that
absolutely.
I think that's a big truth that people need to hear, and that's why we need to trust that God's going to provide the right people in our lives.
Yeah.
To be able to speak into our lives, to be able to say, hey, well, obviously you're going on the right track here, or guess what? You need to get off that track.
Right.
I'm giving it very black and white here, but very basic.
Yeah.
But you get my point on that. So I think there's value in that too. So I really appreciate you sharing that and sharing vulnerably, sharing that with us as well. But